They said, no, we'd rather have it back. Well, that caught my attention too. And then when you look at the rise of the Belt and Road Initiative, a growing group of countries that right now is nearly 75% of human population, 50% of global GDP and growing. Well, that's something that caught my attention, and that's what led me on to the BRICS.
Andy Schectman as he guides you through the metamorphosis of gold. Beyond mere predictions, witness the seismic shifts and transformative elements shaping the very essence of the gold market. In this unique exploration, Andy unveils the unexpected catalysts poised to redefine gold's future, offering a profound perspective that transcends conventional forecasts. So don't go anywhere. Keep watching till the end of this video.
You know, we've talked a lot about, obviously my whole thing goes back to, the reclassification of gold as a tier one asset. And I talked a lot about that when we first started talking. The gold's tier one, and the central banks not only are buying it, but are repatriating it. And what have we seen over the last 2 years? These same central banks, and even an expanding list of them, are accumulating more gold and silver than at any time in the history of central banking. And I would tell you that not only are these central banks the wealthiest people in the world, obviously, but they're also the most well-informed. And when you realize that they know the script, they know the playbook, they're always 2 steps ahead of the public. Look, the fact that gold was reclassified the world's only other tier one reserve asset in 2019 by the Bank of International Settlements, which has gotten no press by anyone but us conspiratorialists. And the fact that I harped on that for a very long time is something people should understand. I mean, why, after almost 70 plus years, would the BIS say gold's tier one? Why not special drawing rights by the IMF or another currency? But to choose gold, to me, caught my attention. And then to see the central banks remove counterparty risk by repatriating their gold from the Bank of England and the New York Fed, which would be the COMEX and the LBMA for convenience sake for these countries to trade and whatnot. They said, no, we'd rather have it back. Well, that caught my attention too. And then when you look at the rise of the Belt and Road Initiative, a growing group of countries that right now is nearly 75% of human population, 50% of global GDP and growing. Well, that's something that caught my attention. And that's what led me on to the BRICS. And when I started down this pathway, I never thought that this was what it would turn out to be. But the growing coalition that we see in the BRICS, in the Belt Road, in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in the Eurasian Economic Union, which are all the same countries, and they all have the same agenda, and that is to push back against the 500-year Western dominance. The Western hegemony has been going on for 500 years as far as these countries are looking at it. And they've never had a chance to stand up to the West. They've never had the military might or the GDP or the wealth or the sophistication, but they do now, and they're finding safety in numbers. And the growing coalition, which is also very concerning, if you look at the countries that are joining on to these unions, most of them are incredibly resource rich, and many of them have been underutilized, and that's China. And these countries are going in a cooperative manner instead of a coercive manner, and they're industrializing these countries. They're building roads and bridges and maritime channels. They're cooperating and building gold and silver mines and oil refineries and taking a piece of it, yes, in a cooperative manner. That's what cooperation and mutual benefit is. But they're industrializing these countries and bringing the middle class to the forefront as ours are disappearing. And so when we've talked about the fact that in just a span of 2 years, Saudi Arabia, not only along with all the OPEC countries, have joined the Belt Road Initiative, and that's a big one. If all of the OPEC countries are on the Belt Road and we're not, is that a problem? Well, kind of seems that way to me. And we've seen them join the BRICS. We've seen them join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We've seen them tell people in Davos that they're open to taking other currency for oil. And we talked last week about MSN publishing an article that was written on another site that's becoming harder and harder to find, that the United Arab Emirates has told the world that they don't want to take dollars for oil anymore. Now, it's an interesting timeline here because this was 2 days before they invited delegates from 200 countries to Dubai to speak on the United Nations Summit on climate control. or climate problems, whatever. And, you know, it's interesting that the man presiding over the conference was the chairman of the United Arab Emirates state-owned oil company. And he's presiding over it. And 2 days before they invite everyone there, he says, by the way, United Arab Emirates doesn't want to take dollars for oil anymore. Now, as provocative as that is, it's not Saudi Arabia and it's not the rest of OPEC. But as I've talked about at length, again, over and over and over, beating a dead horse, and because these are the things that matter to me, logarithmic decay. And that's little by little by little, then bang, all at once, we start to see things happening. And if you don't notice the acceleration of the little by little by little by little by little of all of these deals that are being struck around the world in local currencies. Now, along the way, you know, Jim Rickards, a very, very smart man, a very connected man, said they were going to issue a common-backed currency pegged to commodities, and he said that this would happen in August. Now, the Russian finance minister's last name's Lavrov. Lavrov, I think. He talked about that this will happen. He's been saying it for 2 years, that this would happen and will happen. And look, they weren't ready to do it, right? They went back to the drawing board, and they were tasked with the finance ministers with coming back to the next meeting, which is in Russia, and presenting their findings for a common settlement currency. But the promise that was made is that all of these countries would start doing deals amongst themselves in local currencies to reduce their dependence on the dollar. And everywhere you look, you see it. Everywhere. All of the BRICS countries are trading with one another in their local currencies, from not just oil and natural gas, but you're looking at Brazil, the second largest exporter of corn in the world, trading with China for yuan, and the same thing with soybeans. And look at the decrease in soybean business that the United States farmers have this year with China, with big buyer of soybeans, because they're now doing it with another country in another currency. And, you know, Brazil, a charter member of the BRICS, just applied for OPEC. So all of these things are converging. How fragile the system really is. I mean, everything now is on the web. From your life to your security at your home, your door locks, your alarm system, your Ring camera, everything, and your money. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, gold and silver, which have no counterparty risk if they're in your own possession, would be something that you'd be foolish to not want to at least think about if you understand the possibility of something like that happening. And so, yeah, it's frightening as hell, actually, when you say that, when there's an announcement, when Adam Lipinski says this, and when you take a step back and say, geez, you know, turn your power off for as Bill Holter always says. He says, you want to see what it's like, go home and shut your power off, and for a day, see if you can live with no power, no electricity, no air conditioning, no cell phones, nothing, and see how far you get. And you realize just how dependent we really are, and, you know, how much of a potential issue that could possibly be.
Capping off this